society. So the question is, where do you draw the line between Hausa and Kanuri in Borno, in Ajegunle, where southeastern populations dominate, but most teachers are Yoruba, whose mother tongue will be applied? The minister argues that Nigeria needs a unified language approach to learning. Hence, the return of English as the sole language of instruction from primary school all the way to the tertiary level. On the other side of this conversation is the cultural and linguistic concern. Did we just abandon one of the strongest tools for preserving indigenous languages? Did government give the 2022 policy a fair chance? And what does this mean for the over 29 Nigerian languages that are already extinct and many others that are at risk? To help us unpack this latest development, the data, the politics, and the implications for Nigeria's future, we have with us one of the most qualified voices on this subject. And his name is Professor Francis Egbokare, one of Nigeria's most distinguished linguists and an intellectual giant whose work spans linguistics, education, development, and national policy. Professor Egbokare has been a full professor of linguistics at the University of Ibadan since 1999. He's a former president of the Nigerian Academy of Letters and president of the Open Distance and E-Learning Association of Nigeria. Crucially, he was a member of the committee that drafted the National Language Policy in 2022 and its implementation framework. He also served as the immediate past chairman of the Council of the National Institute for Nigerian Languages. He's a fellow of the Alexander von Humboldt Stiftung, the Nigerian Academy of Letters, the West African Linguistic Society, the Association of Nigerian Authors, and several other institutions. He has been a visiting scholar to universities in the US, Germany, and across Africa. His scholarship covers phonology, Edoid languages, Nigerian Pidgin, digital humanities, sociolinguistics, language and development, and more. His latest work is a dictionary of Nigerian Pidgin. Beyond academia, he's a consultant to the NUC, TED Fund, and COL, a mentor to youth entrepreneurs, a strategic thinker, a widely published author, a poet, a former newspaper columnist, and one of the most respected voices on language policy in Nigeria. Professor, it is a privilege and a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to City Talks with REUBEN ABATI.
Thank you, Dr. Abati. We've not seen for a long time when we were both graduate students at the University of Ibadan.
I was telling you.
I always see you on Zoom.
Good to see you. I was telling someone that we were in Ibadan together, graduate school and all of that, yes. But I went into journalism.
Yes, and you've done very well.
Thank you. Okay, Prof. As someone who helped to draft the 2022 National Language Policy, what is your reaction to this very strong assertion by the minister that data indicates that this is a wrong-headed policy and that it has not helped and it is better abandoned?
Well, we predicted something like this was going to happen because when I was the former president of Linguistic Association of Nigeria, approached some of us to join in drafting the policy. I told him that the problem I have is not with drafting policies, but that the problem is the problem of policy inconsistency and the way policies are abrogated. It took quite a while. His name is Professor Harrison Adeniyi. And then it took us 4 years, 4 good years, working with stakeholders, with communities, with NGOs and CBOs, and of course also with government agency, the National Educational Research Development Council, to come up with a policy, the first language policy, because sometimes people mix up the language policy with the constitutional policy provisions in the Nigerian Constitution.
Section 55. And also Section 55.
Yes, 55. And then, of course, in the National Policy on Education. So there is always a mix-up in terms of the way they look at it. So this is the first real language policy that Nigeria has since independence. So what we are saying, for me, personally, I think is a return to colonialism. This kind of abrogation of a policy by fiat, by pronouncement, and with such arrogance that we saw. Now, you see, what one would have expected is that when there is a contrary research to the global norm, what people have known globally, whether through UNESCO, through the work that Fafunwa did, and through the works that even recently, he's a professor of mathematics education in University, Taraba State University, Professor Ajayi. Some of these works that were done in the areas of mother tongue education. What we should do is to gather the professional association and the language experts together again, and then see exactly whether there is the so-called research that you have done, which I have not seen, and I don't know how many people have seen the research that have been done, whether there is a credible basis for it. Because sometimes data parameters can skew research outcomes. Sometimes it's not a deceptive thing. It's just that some things may just be missing in the approach to the research. So, but nothing like that was done, and the minister was so confident about that commissioned research from the Federal Ministry of Education against global norms, against what is known worldwide, and against the practices that we are seeing everywhere, where nations have some sense of sovereignty. And we were not consulted. We didn't know anything about it. Even the government agency, NERDC, had to take dictations as well. And so I just feel that if you put this together with the national anthem, the old national anthem that was revived, I just think that we are seeing strategic steps in the return to colonialism.
Okay, Prof.
Yes.
Prof, okay, to just focus on this language issue. You know, when our generation was in primary school, there are these things in primary schools, secondary schools, whereby it was an offense to speak in vernacular. You know, and you have the class monitor. If you spoke local language, indigenous language in class, they would say, hey, excuse me, ma, this person has spoken in vernacular. So there was something, you know, that the system objected to at that time. Until you now had people like Professor Babs Fafunwa at the University of Ife, as it then was. He wrote a book, History of Education in Nigeria. He argued for the use of the mother tongue in that book. Then he wrote Mother Tongue Instruction in Nigerian Schools, 1970 to 1978. Then he later became Minister of Education, and he began to push for the mother tongue, you know, as for cultural development, for identity, as a mode of instruction, saying this is what they do in other parts of the world. So, two issues here about legacy, about the efforts that your generation after Babs Fafunwa made. So, is it that the problem is that the idea was flawed, or that it was poorly implemented? I mean, in other words, I'm saying, how do you justify it?
Yeah, you know, the mother tongue education in the policy on education, national policy on education, has not really been implemented. None of the provisions of that policy has been implemented. So you have a problem with the implementation in terms of since independence, since the Nigerian Constitution. You will see also that the requirement in the Constitution, Section 55, says that Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba will be used as such when provisions are made. First of all, that in itself shows you that there's an escape clause there. But this policy that we're talking about, FGN 2022, has not even been implemented. So whatever has been done as a way to condemn that policy, whatever it is they have founded their evidence on, cannot apply to this 2022 policy, because all the issues that were raised about the reasons why implementation was not possible, because of the multiplicity of languages, because of the issues of teachers, the non-availability of teachers, and so on and so forth. Those issues, and then the learning resources, those issues have been addressed in the implementation framework that goes with this current policy that has just been discarded. So my problem basically is that I don't know which aspect of the language policy they are talking about, because we have not even implemented this policy. And then you are saying, oh, no review, you are cancelling every form of review. How do you even review a policy that you have not even tested, you have not even implemented? So this is one of the problems. But I needed to quickly say that the use of modern tongue as a medium of instruction does not really just have to do with legacy. It has a cognitive impact on cognitive development. It impacts achievement. In educational achievement. It also impacts on enrollment. And so there are so many benefits and advantages. In fact, the teaching of science and technology in itself is also part of what the advantages you get when people are properly grounded in the concepts in the language that they are familiar with. So this is not, it's not a case of, it's not a pedantic thing to have a language policy. And then the other issue is to say that this language policy that you are talking about is not just language for medium of instruction alone. We have an omnibus policy that has to do with how you integrate Nigerian languages to the global information, the global information infrastructure, to the vectors of international and national development, into tourism, for instance, and so on and so forth. So it covers everything. But the minister has taken just one aspect and has discarded the whole policy on the grounds of just one aspect that has not even been tested, has not been applied, that goes contrary to what is known as the norm and what has been proven by research. So this is really where the problem is, and that's where I think it's more of a problem of mentalities and improperly digested philosophical mindset.
Okay, Prof. Let me go with the submission by Professor Onigo Otiche in his book Ethnic Pluralism, Ethnicity and Ethnic Pluralism in Nigeria, 1973, thereabouts, in which he said, okay, there are about 450 linguistic groups in Nigeria, about, different tongues, almost about 450 in Nigeria. Now, how do you implement a national mother tongue policy in practical terms in a country as complex and diverse as this? How do you teach science in Ejagam language? How do you teach biology in Edo language? How do you teach geography in Yoruba language? And how do you provide, a common meeting point for the same children that you are going to prepare for a competitive world? These are local languages, mother tongues that we talk about. Are they really the language of competition in the 21st century and beyond?
Every language has its place, and that is where you have the categorization of the languages. You have national languages, you have state languages. By the way, the number of languages in Nigeria is about 526 or thereabout.
Okay.
So you have the state languages, you have the local government languages. The whole approach is to assign roles to these languages at their various at their various areas of influence, so that you have to free communities to be able to develop their languages at the village, at the local government, at the state, at the community levels. For instance, we have three major languages, Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo, which are national languages, which have to be developed at the level as national languages. But at the states are already making laws. They are making laws because this whole business is not states are allowed to also make their laws and to develop their languages. In my state, for instance, I know that Edo, Esa, and so on are actively being developed. I know that in my village, for instance, there's a language community. Communities are actively developing their languages. So all languages have their places where they can thrive. So it's not as if the federal government will come up and start to invest and put resources into the development of 525 languages, but it can facilitate the linguistic human rights to ensure that these languages are properly attended to, and that the communities and owners of the languages have the opportunities also to sustain these languages. Now, one of the critical things that we found out was that because the orientation now has shifted too much towards capital, unless you talk about things in a way that we have to do with fund generation, money, and so on, most politicians don't listen. We changed the whole idea of the philosophical frame of the new language policy by developing the new narratives of diversity as a not as a liability but as a national resource, and then framed these whole policies in such a way that Nigerians can see the value in diversity and that in language as a resource. Let me give you one example. We have a lot of people coming to learn Yoruba now, learn Hausa in Nigeria, because of the growing role of Nigeria in international cycles. Now you abolish Nigerian Pidgin. Also, it's another language. When you totally abrogate a policy that will lead to the development of these languages, ensure that they are getting enough international energized internationally, what you are saying basically is that these languages don't matter. That's basically the information you are sending. And in fact, a number of countries are taking cues from Nigeria and following suit, especially in Africa, following suit with because of our language policy and the bold steps that we have taken. Now we are telling them that we actually didn't know what we are talking about. So I don't see that there's a problem. We are not going to be dealing with 525 languages that the federal government is pumping money into. Local governments will deal with some of the languages. The states will deal with some of the languages, and then of course there will be centralized ones that are dealt with by the federal government. But I want to also say that the Nigeria that we are dealing with today has utterly changed. The fears that we are exercising in terms of resources, again, do not exist in the same way that we saw them before, because technology has changed the dynamics completely. For instance, people can produce materials more easily because of the use of technology, so that the cost elements that we were talking about through printing and so on is now minimized, because people can now use open education resources and ensure that there is a lot of exchanges between communities and between different people. So we need to look at the exact kind of the real challenges. And the Linguistics Association of Nigeria organized a conference in this respect and has offered a lot of suggestions on how we can transcend the implementation problems. And I think those kinds of suggestions ought to be taken on board before such decisions are taken.
Okay, Prof. Well, I mean, this subject is not new. As far back as the early or late 60s, we had this discussion of the politics of language in African literature. Was it Ben Obunselu who wrote about it? Then in Decolonizing the Mind, we had Ngugi wa Thiong'o saying he will no longer write in English, he will write in his native Kikuyu. And, those arguments have been there. So this whole argument about cultural preservation, preventing the rapid extinction of Nigerian languages, and the meaning for cultural identity and nationhood. Now, many will say that the government acted too quickly based on data that you are doubting. Will you say that, there wasn't enough consultation? Even if government is quoting some experts who arrived at their own consultations, did they consult experts like you, people like you who formulated the 2022 policy? Or they just acted on their own without even talking to the original people who came up with the policy?
No, I don't think it's about consultation per se, because if it's just about consultation, and I'm sure they consulted some people, and some people did the research. I think it's more fundamental than that. That we are dealing with basically an obliteration of a knowledge resource, a knowledge base. That languages and cultures of a people are not just pedantic things that you discard. And I've talked about the role of mother tongue or mother language in cognitive development, for instance, in learning, in even interaction in the classroom, and in fact in so many other areas of life, in terms of creative thinking, in terms of innovation, because even innovation itself is culturally situated, in terms of the worldview, the way we see the world, because all reality is interpretation, and it is the language that gives us the truth. I mean, the tools with which we confront reality, so that I am who I am based on the tools of language that I have to confront reality. The problem of a foreign language is that it subjects you to to some level of slavery, in the sense that when I use English to learn, for instance, a language that does not derive from the environment in which I have grown up, I have a problem. I'm already disadvantaged in terms of learning abstract concepts, because they are not grounded and situated in my cosmos, in my reality. So that is why it is not just a question of consulting me or consulting anybody and so on. It's a question of the fundamental role of language in national development, in the fundamental role of language in educational development, and the mother tongue is the critical element in this regard. Yes.
Okay, Prof. I get your point about cultural identity, language preservation, and all of that. Preventing the extinction of languages, ensuring that people are grounded in their own space, natal space, as it were. However, reality, many Nigerian parents don't even want their children to speak their mother tongues. Many Nigerian parents don't even speak their native tongues at home. They are grooming their children to become very cosmopolitan, because they say that the language of competition is not rooted in you speaking Fufude, or speaking Ejagam, or speaking Esa, or speaking Ibibio, or speaking Efik. There are many children from these cultural backgrounds who cannot even communicate in their local languages, because they are being groomed by parents to speak the language of the West so that they can compete. How do we deal with that? Because I think that's the mindset.
But because they are misinformed, Dr. ABATI. Yeah, they are misinformed.
Okay.
In a sense, but also they are pragmatic in another sense. You see, what we have done basically is that we have created an exclusion through English only system. What it means basically is that because language has now become a tool for exclusion, that if you do not learn English, you use English for employment, you use English for examinations, you use English for qualifications, and so on and so forth. So the parents are actually forced, not because they want to do it, they are actually forced, some of them are forced into this moving and watching their languages die. In just one generation, when there is no transmission of a language, you will find that the language totally dies. And the problem is that there's a lot of knowledge resources in these languages, and that is why the language is said to be one of the biggest encyclopedia of human knowledge system, indigenous knowledge system. How do you deal with the knowledge of the fauna, the knowledge of the flora, the knowledge of the medical practices? People come in here and they want to look at herbs, but these herbs are encoded in the indigenous languages. The naming of the herbs themselves has a lot of information about the functionality of these herbs. So when you now allow these languages to die, what has just happened is that you allow the obliteration of the entirety of the knowledge resources that our ancestors have built over generations. Now, Nigeria has one of the largest language mortality in the world. The death of a language is like a genocide. When a language disappears, it disappears with all the knowledge, the history, the migration, and the health practices of the people. This is the critical issue, and that is why this policy has become very, very important, in order to stop people from either or, so that people can make rational choices about what they want to do. You know, Reuben, you were the first to use a term that is called, when you said talked about expatriate Nigerians to describe what you have just talked about. You were the first person, and you have been quoted extensively on that by linguists. But the truth basically now is that we are dealing with linguistic dysfunction. No longer, it has even gotten, because you find people who have a form of English, the sound of English, but the cultural nuances, the meanings, the contents of the English language is actually not there. So it's just a lot of sound and fury, but without any meaning. And that is why you are having a problem of our inability to achieve consensus in Nigeria today. Just make a statement in English language and you will find 1 million interpretations, because we have not also been able to learn the English language properly. And the reason for this is that you need the local languages to be grounded in the local languages to learn a foreign language properly. So this is a known fact that we need the grounding of the local languages or the indigenous languages to be able to acquire foreign languages and use them effectively.
Okay, Professor Egbokare, there are countries where the model has worked. In Finland, in Norway, in China, in Ethiopia, early education is conducted in mother tongue with excellent results. Those people who go through that process, they're still able to compete internationally. Now, what is the exact problem with Nigeria? Is it politics? Is it constitutional provision? Since you have cited Section 55, which recognizes only 3 languages, or it is about teacher training and quality. Where are the teachers who will teach these languages?
Well, a lot of issues have been raised, and that was from the basis, for instance, of planning for this language policy. They talked about multiplicity of languages. They talked about the absence of teachers. They talked about the problem of content. But let's be frank with ourselves. Does this apply only to language? It doesn't apply only to language. We are having a general crisis in the education sector. To single out language as the cause of crisis itself, I find very laughable. Go to any school. When I was in school, we had 3 English teachers. One would teach comprehension. Another would teach lexis and so on. Then another would teach pronunciation. But if you go to any school now, you discover that there is a problem with teachers generally. So it cannot be for language. I think the political will, and more than the political will, is that according to Ayondele, our education system consistently produces deluded hybrids. We don't have a sense.
Professor Emmanuel Ayondele, the
educated elite we are creating deluded hybrids through the education system because we have not decolonized our education system. So the leadership we are producing are basically still rooted in colonial enterprise. So what you are seeing basically is an expression of this coloniality. And if we do not decolonize the system, and the language policy is one way of decolonizing the mentality. So what the minister has done is an expression of that coloniality, which has not changed since independence.
But the point being made by the minister is that in a real world where the main language for Anglophone countries is the English language, he says the students are failing exams as a result of this attempt to give them a background in mother tongue education.
That is actually laughable. And I've just said that they are failing exams. They are failing exams everywhere, not because of the problem of language. But China, you cited the example of China, that employs Mandarin. Why are they not failing exams because of Mandarin that they are using? So it tells you that the language is not the cause. So this is a diversion. The real fundamental cause. Let's do serious research. And if they need help, Linguistic Association of Nigeria will assist them in doing that. The Nigeria Association Academy of Education will assist them. But the problem is that we are diverting the attention from the real cause. We have problem of poor funding, poor teacher education, Let me give you one example. Look, just take the JAM exam and see the quality in terms of the in terms of the cutoff point for courses. One of the lowest cutoff points goes to the lowest cutoff point go to education courses and colleges of education. You want to create a system where your brightest end up in the schools teaching, not where your worst end up in the schools teaching. So they have to address this imbalance first of all. They have not addressed it. The funding has not been addressed. So now to single out language in the myriad of causes and effects is an evidence that there is something fundamentally wrong with the elite, the Nigerian elite, in terms of the mindset. It's a mentality issue. It's a philosophical issue. It's a disconnect in terms of the disconnect with the vision of state. And worse still is the lack of systems thinking. If the Minister of Education knows that this decision is going to affect Ministry of Finance or Culture and Tourism, or is going to affect economic development, I'm sure that he will have a rethink. So we need to have a sense in which we see what the effect of what we are doing and how it will dovetail into every other thing in national life. So this is the problem we have. Actually, that's why you have seen a lot of Nigerians rising up, and then they are totally ignoring the commitment of Nigerians to their languages. If you go to any community now, Dr. Abati, you will find a language committee working on the local languages. You will find retired teachers, retired civil servants, gathering themselves without incentives, without encouragement, working on these languages. That is the Nigerian energy. And what a government should do is to harness this energy and then ensure that it catalyzes the energies of these various sectors in order to create a national momentum. And one of the things I need to say is that we are always talking about scientific development. Go and see the way nations develop. Before any scientific revolution, there must be a cultural one. There must be a cultural one. Before you have an industrial revolution, you must have a renaissance, a knowledge revolution, rooted in the culture and the aspiration and identity of the people. You want to now subvert the culture of the people. You want to destroy the very basis of transition and transformation and create widening cycles of meanings and understandings. And this is part of the challenge. So we need a retraining. By the time people get into government, we need to give them some sound training in philosophy and ideology of development, and to understand exactly how things are connected. It is not just enough to be a professor with book knowledge and have mental clarity or whatsoever, but there is something more than that. You have to understand exactly how what you do impacts on society. And I think this is what is missing in leadership.
Thank you very much, Professor Egbokare. Well, the way this program is structured, we would also like to hear from people who have been listening to us, people who have joined us via social media and other platforms. So what we're going to do is we take a short break, and when we return, we open the lines, the phone lines, for interventions. People can call us on 0700 109 11051. They can also send us WhatsApp messages at 0909 916 4403. And the key questions will be: do you support the reversal of the mother tongue policy? Should Nigerian children be taught in English from day one? Or should government have fixed the implementation gaps instead of scrapping the policy entirely? And you have all listened to the subject area expert, Professor Francis Egbokare, who has touched on the many dimensions of this issue, saying principally that this is like a return to colonialism, and that the policy, which he was one of the architects in 2022, could have been handled differently, and that the obstacles that the current policymakers see do not actually exist, because if the implementation had been different, all the issues about preserving Nigerian languages would have been easier in terms of implementation. After all, they don't have such problems in China, They don't have problems like that in Finland, in Norway, in Ethiopia, where the mother tongue is, by way of policy and practical action, are protected. Well, these are the issues. I don't know whether we can take a minute to go on break and come back. Otherwise, I'll just take the first caller who would like to intervene. Hello? Okay, maybe we'll go to Zoom. Are there any hands up that we can just respond to? But in the meantime...
There are hands up, Reuben.
Oh, okay, that's
Dr. ABATI. There are plenty hands up.
There are plenty hands up. Let's start with Dr. Boniface Chizia, and our guest is still here, Professor Francis Egbokare, former president of the Nigerian Language Association, former president of the Nigerian Academy of Letters, professor of linguistics at the University of Ibadan.
Okay, am I on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Reuben, congratulations on your birthday.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, my concern is about continuity and change. If we are doing things and we are beginning to change things, I think we better make sure that we have fundamental reasons why we want to make changes. I believe that we should move on. Look at AI; it's been disruptive. We don't have any chances with AI. If we don't get on board, we're going to be thoroughly disadvantaged. But this mother tongue and so on and so forth, how come they become so important? Because then we'll start doing changes, introducing changes, and we'll find that we've not been thorough in doing them. Then we'll now encounter some difficulties along the way, and then we are not known of being seamless. We're trying to implement changes. And so we're going to come up with lots of problems. And I think that fundamentally, I think that what is better for us is that we should initially be taught in their mother tongue. That resonates with common sense. So you are taught to speak the language, at home, and you take it to school, and then so that you don't have any disconnect. But then there are challenges. You have mother tongue. Are you prepared for mother tongue? Do you have facilitators to facilitate a mother tongue? Do you have textbooks and so on and so forth? What about engaging, in technological areas and so on? And then so there are some challenges. So I'm just concerned that we've just changed reversed our national anthem and so on. And you don't know why we're doing that. I think we have more important things for us to do than to be embarking on all these changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chizia. I had the voice of Mr. Ibrahima earlier. Can we also have Mr. Ibrahima's contribution?
Yes, thank you, Dr. ABATI. Where I am now, I can't really stay on the video, as you can see. But just let me say this. I fully endorse what Professor Egbokare is submission, 100%. We must not allow our languages to die. So let us have a campaign, and indeed, one should produce a position paper to restore our Nigerian languages at all levels. Did you learn Latin in school or French? Dr. ABATI, if I say come up with a I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So our languages are important, they matter. And I think we should encourage that we develop language clinics in every hamlet in Nigeria. Our culture must not die, not just language, our food, the costumes, our dances, everything, we must continue to put them at the front burner so that these things don't die. Most of our children, they don't understand our languages. Even Nigerians now got out their way to go and learn Mandarin, how to speak in Chinese. So what is wrong in preserving our languages? So I don't agree with the minister. This policy flip-flop, they should stop it. Maybe it's not that only 18-year-olds can write tests to go into the university, or that liberal arts students will not take maths at O-level, not compulsory subject, they revise themselves again. Now it is language. Our language policy, the concern must be amended to recognize more languages. Prof said we have over 526 languages in Nigeria. Every language matter. That is the beauty of our diversity. So I think I fully endorse his position. And Prof, I said, Harasa, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, who else would like to contribute? I see that we have Professor Ulu Obafemi with us. We have Professor Duro Oni. These are the titans of the Academy of Letters. I don't know if either of the two professors or both of them would like to speak. I see Professor Mark Igile. These are subject area experts who may want to make a contribution. If you can hear me, sirs, I would like to hear from you. Hello?
Yes, Prof. Yes, Dr. ABATI.
Okay, who's on the line?
I want to thank you for this program, and I want to
please your name.
Congratulate.
Okay, that's Professor Oluwabafemi. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Yeah. Congratulations on your birthday.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I endorse everything that Professor Gorare has said, that we're trying to move from cultural vandalism to cultural genocide through language. The policies that you have not implemented, how can you be sure that it won't work? The inferiorization of our languages, right from school, during the time you are talking about, continues by this attempt to kill the language policy. People's thought is best expressed through their mother tongue. As long as we continue to think in other people's language, we cannot invent. So we must resist this attempt to kill our thought process, to kill our culture, to kill our vehicular of expression, and therefore to kill our growth. This policy is ill-advised, is ill-motivated, and is negative for our cultural development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Do we have other hands up via Zoom? Quickly. Okay, if not, while waiting for other interventions.
For Lucas there, you have Gideon.
Okay.
Gideon is there.
Machonu.
Okay, Foluke Ademokun.
Yes. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm not a subject matter expert, but I'm a parent. And I know that it's important that our educational, sector, the policies, we operate within that sector, stabilize the system. You can't, be shifting from one policy to another. And just thinking that because students are not passing the English language, it's because they are made, to study their local languages in school. That's wrong. First, you need to ask, what is the cost of the textbook? Are the textbooks, English textbooks, are they available? Nobody's asking that question. Is it easy, for parents to purchase the textbooks? Nobody's asking that question. And we have seen from this, Zoom call or this program today, that there are other countries that speak like the Chinese. They speak their own, indigenous language, and they speak fluent, English. If you have come in contact with them, maybe in other parts of the world, you have the Indians. So why is our own different? Why would we turn that sector into like a guinea pig, an experimental, a platform where you just come, say something, just change the policy without even consulting, with parents widely, without getting to have a feel of what is operational? That means tomorrow another minister will come and say, now we are going to use this particular language as the language of the main subject to be studied in school. We can't afford to do that. It's important that people who are involved in policy making, policy writing, consultation is part of our policy making, and that's lacking in this instance. What came to my mind when I saw that was, I think some months ago, the president of America had a meeting with some African presidents, and he commended the Liberian president for speaking, such good English. I wouldn't know if maybe the minister was watching and he felt, maybe Nigeria needs some commendation, from the English speaker. Otherwise, I do not see a reason for this shift. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Foluke Ademokun. Now let's go to, I see Mr. Gideon.
The president of land is here, Gideon Omachonu.
Yes, that's the person I'm going to call next, Gideon Omachonu, professor, right? Okay.
All right, good afternoon. Can I talk now?
Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
Hello.
Please go ahead. Please, Professor Machono, please go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can I go ahead?
Please, yes, sir. You can go ahead, please. Can you hear
All right,
me?
thank you, Dr. Abati. Thank you, the guest speaker of the program. Sometimes, let me start with a comedian that says, who did this to us? You know, you realize that what the government has done in this instance is rather treating symptoms than the cause. The problem we have in our educational system is not language, is just an aspect, as an iota of. You realize that that our students or pupils are not doing well. Yeah, the language aspect of it is that when you learn something in another man's language, it takes a while to assimilate. It is not that we are a race of fools or dullards, but language of foreign origin, language that is not within what you knew at your worldview, something closer to home. It made education generally as an abstraction to us. There is no country that has ever developed technologically using another man's language in education. Now, many of our people who did even medicine and other courses read in Nigeria and went to Europe, for instance, are familiar with Germany.
Hello, sir. Hello. I seem to have lost contact with him. Hello? Hello? Hello, sir. Hello? Okay, we seem to have lost contact there with Professor Omachono. Once he's able to re-establish connection with us, we'll go right back to him. But I see Mr. Lanre Arogundade with his hand up there on the screen. Can we quickly go to Mr. Arogundade while we're trying to re-establish connection with Professor Gideon Omachono, the president of the Nigerian...
Okay, thank you, Dr. Abati, and let me join others to wish you happy birthday once again.
Thank you.
So, well, I think first we could give some examples, or at least of our generation, even though we call it analog generation now. I didn't read any English book, any book written in English until I got to, I think, primary 3. That was when we were first introduced to some English text. And I do recall that in those days we were joking where we even saw EYE, because down there in Ekiti, that time EYE was a year, and we were just joking, oh, so there's a year in English.
You are a product of the
I know you were standing to that. Yes, so and so that was primary 3, and then primary 4, 5, 6, and then we did entrance into secondary school. And by the time we were being taught English and the rest of them, we didn't have a problem adjusting. And even the teaching of English that time was also such that you had up to about 3 teachers taking English, different aspects of English. So, in a sense, the last speaker is right that we have a holistic problem. I was excited when this idea of teaching students in their indigenous languages was muted, because I think it was the best. Let people at the primary level and then do the necessary transition. The other point I want to make is that I'm even surprised this is coming now, because we've seen a new trend of science subjects being translated into Nigerian languages. Yeah. Chemistry. We have a number of people who have done that already, who are translated I think even the Hausa language, this happened at Bayero University, Kano. I was just trying to get those examples before you called me. So it's a trend that has started. And I was looking forward to a situation where we'll have chemistry in the Ijaw language, physics in Fulani language. That will be it. And people will be able to relate. I think we just have this mentality that because of English, we can't learn anything. Although when we go to the higher institution, that we realize that the Russians never learned anything about science in any other language other than Russian or the Chinese and the rest of them. So for me, it's a policy that should be reversed. We need to encourage teaching, at least at the primary level, of all these subjects in our language at a time where we now have people, helping to, translate these, subjects in the various indigenous languages. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, at this point, I would like to go back to our guest, Professor Francis Egbokare. Most of the commentators seem to be supporting you. Okay, it looks like there is a caller on the line. Let's take that very quickly, and then we come back to Professor Egbokare for... Hello?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, this Oracle calling from Oshodi Solo.
Oracle from Oshodi Solo. Okay.
Solo, yes, Lagos. Actually, the problem we have is the mindset, having the inferiority perspective about our culturalistic existence. And as a result, we are losing. See a parent that says, please do not speak vernacular here. A parent herself or himself cannot communicate properly on English language. They don't have the fundamental, the basicity, the rules and the concord of the language. So the problem we have, even when we are younger then, we have Hausa teacher, we have Yoruba teacher, we have Igbo teacher, and we're very happy. And some of us who are in primary school, we will translate fire, that is F-I-R-E. They will translate in Yoruba, say fire, fire. So as we are coming up, we try to learn the linguistic standards, fire. So the problem is not the problem of English language, because the majority that even lecture or teach, because they don't actually have the totality of the knowledge. It is best communicated in our indigenous languages. So our mindset should not be centered on inferiority perspective in all areas, even our local product, not just only language, but in entirety. So we should embrace it from the childhood, from the nursery and primary, and the teacher of the course should not feel shy, should not feel ashamed. They should escalate it, they should loud it, they should advocate the seminar. We must embrace our languages. It must not die, as it has been said, because it's an enlightenment, it's a necessity of our existence, so it must be lauded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Oracle from Oshodi Solo. We now go back to Professor Francis Egbokare, who has been listening to the various contributions. Well, I think by way of summary, Dr. Chizia says there may well be challenges, but this whole issue about language is about cultural identity. And most of the commentators, respondents, we seem to have agreed with Professor Francis Egbokare that, look, our language is important, our identity is important, and implementation may well be the problem, but saying mother tongue is not important is a wrong-headed reversal of a policy that could move and deepen the education system. So I come back to you, Professor Egbokare. I'm sure you took notes and listened to the various contributions as we begin to summarize.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Abati, and those who have made contribution. I acknowledge Professor Olu Obafemi, and Professor Duroni, who are actually at the forefront of the cultural development of this country.
Professor Wasumba was also part of the conversation. Yes. Chiyoke Wasumba. I saw him on the screen. Yeah. Yes.
You see, language and culture cannot be separated. You destroy one, you finish the other one up. And I think we need to move away from this inferiority complex. I think a lot of what we do is created by inferiority complex and the lack of confidence. I can tell you now that the implementation framework is so extensive that what needs to be done is to challenge the Linguistic Association of Nigeria, challenge the NERODC, challenge communities. Everybody has a role to play, such that the idea was that we cannot over-centralize in such a way that an unhealthy cost is placed on the federal government. Do you know that, in fact, from the implementation, every university and tertiary institution in this country was given a mandate. So we created mandate areas where you must develop the language of the locality in which you exist as part of your national mandate. So these are some of the things that were done that would minimize the total cost of research, total cost of language development. For instance, take my department. Every year we graduate about 40 students in final year students. If they focus only on Yoruba, an aspect of Yoruba, as they do presently, in terms of translating technical vocabularies, providing teacher training resources, developing open educational resources, which can be shared in a common platform, you can see that this is not a problem. That's the point I'm making. That's why it's very painful. It is not a problem. Implementation is no longer a problem because the dynamics have changed. The policy is on ground now that ensures that it is implementable. The national competition between communities is boosting the development of local languages. Every community wants to have its identity maintained, and so we are capitalizing on that. Then, of course, you have numerous radio stations in the country that can broadcast in these languages. So you have in Ibadan, where I stay alone, you have over 100 radio stations. So these are the national assets that the implementation framework is saying we can integrate the national assets. You see, the problem with development in Nigeria is that we're always looking to outside the country. But when you look at the amount of national infrastructural and cultural assets in this country, we don't need anybody. So this is what we are saying. We have worked on it. The minister should trust us. The country should give us the opportunity as an academy, as an association, because this is our life. Our languages, our culture, our identity, they are our lives. We cannot negotiate them away. We cannot bargain them away. If we have to exist, this is an existential issue. We cannot play with these things. So this is just an appeal, on a note of appeal, that it is not too late. We can go back and then the minister can challenge the academy. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Francis Egwokare. Thank you for your insights. The debate around language, identity, and education is not an academic argument. It affects, as we have seen from the tone of the conversations today, the future of millions of Nigerian children and also Nigeria's place in the world. Today's conversation shows that policy is only as strong as its implementation, and that decisions about language carry enormous implications for learning outcomes, culture, and national development. Thank you very much once again, Professor Francis Egwokare, for joining us.
Thank you.
Now if you are just joining the program, you can listen to us again and share this conversation later on our YouTube channel at City 1051 FM. And you can also reach me personally at my social media account at ABATI 1990. This edition of City Talks with REUBEN ABATI was produced by Reso Kiche with Oluwaseun Adetitun and Abiodun Odunton. The executive producer is Adedoja Allen. Thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy your weekend, and then join us again next week when we come your way. Bye for now. Best wishes.
Most of the contracts in NDDC are given out to members of National Assembly, but you don't know about it. It's okay.
When you need unbiased information, balanced analysis, reviews, and insight on the policies and programs that concern you, listen to City Talks with REUBEN ABATI. Be a part of it. Call 0700 1051 1051 to lend your voice on topics and help shape our country for the better.
My name is REUBEN ABATI. I will be your host on City Talks from noon to 1 p.m. every Saturday. Join me as we dissect major issues of public interest. You will be glad you did.
City Talks with REUBEN ABATI on your number one lifestyle station, City